in another tutorial, we left off with this texture, this leather texture. I was talking about interface graphics and how they've become really popular. There's almost this resurgence of interface design because of all the iPads and the iPods and things like that. Well, not only you don't have to be an iPad or an iPod designer to use this, because these interfaces have become so popular. Cell phones, websites, everybody else is kind of adopting some of the graphics that we use in these interfaces, so they're becoming more useful again. So let's talk about the graphic that we have here. I used a few layers here. You can see I added the leather texture just with a shape, and then I used the dodge tool in the last tutorial to go in there and to kind of just dodge in that little beveled edge to it. And then finally we added a drop shadow just to kind of give it a little bit of, just kind of lift it off a little bit. Okay, well, if you take a look at the original, it's also got some stitching along here. So we can do that pretty easily. In fact, we're going to use one of the same techniques that we used before. I'm going to create a new layer to hold it. We're going to go to our pen tool here, and we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to draw a path. All right, I'm going to draw this path right along the inside here. All right, we're going to curve it a little. That's a little too much. Yeah, right about there. And then just click down here. So now we have our path on the inside. Well, if you recall from the last tutorial, we did the dodge tool to go in there and dodge right along this path. That was a lot more accurate of a way to do that. Well, we can do that. We can make a little dashed line here instead of painting the little stitching in here. If we set our foreground color to white, we go to our brush tool, and you go to your brush picker here. If you go out to the pop-out menu, you'll see there's something called square brushes. So when you load those square brushes, and let's get into the bigger brush palette here. When you load those square brushes, if you click on it in the big brush palette that we have, which is why I went to the window menu, we can now take the square and we can squish it and make it a very thin rectangle. You don't see the rectangle yet until you increase the spacing. Now, once I increase the spacing, I see these little dashed lines. Well, remember, we have a separate layer to hold this. My foreground is white. If you look at the brush preview, you can see what it looks like. It's a little kind of flat rectangle thing. And like that, the technical term for it, it's the rectangle thing. We go over here to our path palette. It works the same. If we click this button, you're going to see it's not going to look quite right yet, but I'm going to click it anyway. See what happens? See how it creates these little dashed lines, but it creates them all the same. We want them to go in direction. So what we can do here is instead we'll go under shape dynamics. We take our angle jitter and we set it to direction. And that tells it to follow the direction of the path that it's on. All right, so I undo. Let's click on it again. And now you can see the little stitching there. And you can undo a couple of times here and just kind of finesse it a little bit. I might come in here, maybe make the size just a little bit smaller, and maybe even bring the spacing down. And let's try it again. You know, that's actually not too bad. I think we'll leave it with that. So I'll hit the delete key. We can get rid of our path line there. Now, a couple things to clean up. We'll go over to our layers palette, and let's take the eraser tool. All I'm going to do is just erase that little edge away. Here's the last finishing touch. Go to your brush tool. Select one of the top brushes, just a hard, small, like 2-3 pixels, black brush. So set your foreground color to black and lower your opacity to about 50%. What we want to do here is these lines, this little stitching is way too clean. We're going to reduce the opacity to about 85%. And then we're going to come in here and add little holes, because there would be holes in the leather where the stitching went in. So just click tiny little holes here. And this will add some nice depth to it, some nice dimension. It'll really make it look like the stitching is kind of going in and out of the layer here, or the leather. There, just like that. So let's back out a little bit so we can see it. Now take a look. So that's before the stitching, and that's after. It's a little hard to see. And in fact, let me zoom in for you here. Okay, I'm going to go to my history panel here. I'm just going to undo. I'm going to go back quite a few steps here just to undo. So see, that's before, that's after. Before, after. You could see the difference there, what that makes. If I zoom out a little bit, it'll be a little harder to see, but I kind of want you to get a feel for it. Again, that's before, that's after. Just tiny little things like that make a big difference to making things like this look real. So when you combine the pen tool with brushes, paths, things like that, you can get some very accurate and some very realistic effects for creating, whether it's interfaces or any type of designs. But I think you'll find these things become more and more popular as devices become more popular. Ideas like this become more popular, not just for devices, but it tends to kind of trickle over into ads. It trickles over into website design, lots of different areas where you can use techniques like this. Well, folks, my name is Matt Kloskowski. Hope you enjoyed. We'll talk to you again soon.